Hello everyone. Welcome back to the latest lecture session. We've been discussing various adverse effects, let's say, right, that the world is going to experience, or rather we are going to experience due to our own actions, global warming being the primary aspect. And then we moved on to air pollution, I believe. That was the last topic that we were looking at. And we saw that it was typically the poorer countries, again, or the developing countries, India, China, who are bearing the brunt of, what do we say, this industrialization and thus air pollution. Again, the developed countries too went through this phase, but we don't have as much data that we do have now from that time, obviously. Again, you would have heard of the London smog, Los Angeles smog, and so on and so forth. They still experience smog, but not to that extent. But when they were industrializing and they were having their own, what do we say, relatively not clean technologies, if I may say so, right, they would have experienced the air pollution too. But again, now we are experiencing it on a pan-India scale at levels that are killing people left and right and playing havoc with human health, let's say, right. But one key aspect is that, why I guess are we not able to change the relevant issues, why are we not able to bring about change now? Again, we talked about leaders, political leaders and so on and so forth, they coming from society. But again, leaders are a reflection of what society wants now. They do point the way, or they can excite the emotions and such, right. But still, it depends on what the society thinks now. So in this context, I want to point out one example. Here we have, I guess, a town in Chile, right. It's primarily, air pollution is primarily caused by residents burning wood in the winter months. Again, for them the winter is in June and July, right, damp wood in the winter months of June and July. Here we are talking about this particular layer out here. Again, this is due to temperature inversion typically, right, and you are going to have this particular layer suspended right above, what do we say, the breathing layer, or right above the land now. So again, we experience this in winter too. Certainly the people in Delhi experience this every winter, right. So again, but what's causing it, it's the reason is that the residents burning damp wood. And this particular town, I guess, was the second or third ranked or most polluted city in Chile now. And then the government brought in, or introduced subsidies, as in providing electric heaters, let's say, at a subsidy to those people who were willing to give up their old wooden furnaces, or furnaces that would depend on wood, pardon me, and so on and so forth. Well, though the improvement, there was some improvement, people did not really go for them. Well, one aspect was that, I guess, the furnaces, they were using it both for cooking and heating, and air pollution being, I guess, in a sense, a silent killer. You are not going to drop dead like that, but you are going to develop symptoms, experience adverse effect and so on and so forth. You are going to have, what do we say, relatively increasing levels of or poor quality of life, right, increasing levels of, or poor quality of life, right. So that, I guess, what do we say, does not bring about as much change in people's thoughts as in what do we say, an incident like the coronavirus, not incident, I guess, as in an incident like coronavirus would do, I guess, right. Why is that? Again, it's the shock factor, if I may say so. Coronavirus, typically, I guess, we are talking about 1%, but obviously the transmission from human to human is remarkable, and relatively more susceptible, what do we say, populations, let's say the elderly, those with comorbidities, let's say diabetes, hypertension and so on and so forth, they have a greater chance of not being able to survive from a COVID attack now, right. But again, air pollution, it's not going to discriminate. Again, people with other comorbidities or with comorbidities, pardon me, are going to what do we say, experience more adverse effects. But again, it's a silent killer. Well, that's one reason why people do not pay attention. So here in this particular town, even though the relevant government introduced, what do we say, subsidies and tried to wean people away from their wood burning furnaces, people did not really take it up, did not take it up. Again, as I mentioned, it's reluctance to give up old habits now, and that has been continuing. Wood smoke smothers this particular town in Chile, yet despite WHO ranking its air as the worst in the Americas, the residents are still reluctant to alter their habits. Again, the relevant article, it is a pretty good article, again you can go through that now, right. And I guess we talked about this. I am not going to go through that. We talked about some of the worst, what do we say, or most polluted cities in the world, and I guess we talked about, we came across Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Jaipur, and so on and so forth, most of them Indian countries. I think there were 10 in the top 20 or so. And this is a video of a particular journalist strapping on an air monitor, air quality monitor, pardon me, and taking a ride through or using an auto rickshaw in Delhi now. Well, again, I wouldn't say it's surprising to me, but there are some interesting facts out there, especially when you're stuck in a, what do we say, a traffic jam, and everyone honking the horns, yes, but not turning off the engines, NOx being emitted, particulate matter remarkably high. Well, again, that's something for you to look at, let's see. So we'll move on to the next major aspect. I guess again this is Roorkee. I'm not sure when the next batch of students is going to arrive. Again, keep in mind this is July 2020 and we are experiencing the effects of I guess the corona induced crisis. So I'm not sure when the students are going to come back, but typically when you do come back, at least people from other parts of India picture Haridwar and Rishikesh as pristine, non-polluted places on or in India, let's say, and places worth visiting. Yes, there are places worth visiting for various reasons, but I guess when the people think of pristine, I guess they will be relatively mistaken. So this is from Haridwar, right? You have different melas, but in general, people come here for various reasons. Certainly, tourism is one issue, but most people have a religious connect with, obviously it's Haridwar, right? Connect with Haridwar now, right? And then Rishikesh too. And you have massive gatherings, every time, and Kumbh Mela, I guess that's a different aspect altogether, or different melas, pardon me. But the aftermath of, all these gatherings, let's say, what do you see out here? You see remarkable levels of pollution out here. Again, the relevant article here. And again, keep in mind that the title of this article in the Hindu is NGT once again bans plastic use in Haridwar, Rishikesh to save the Ganga. Well, here I guess the issue is about Ganga, but in general there are going to be remarkable adverse effects now. So again, the last major topic we are going to discuss before we delve into the real engineering aspects, if I may say so, right, is going to be with respect to plastic pollution. Again, plastic pollution, the first thing that every concerned selfish citizen asks is, why do I care about it? Plastic pollution, I can just put it out and then I am done with it. It does not really affect me. Well, again, as we see, if you affect different layers of this particular world, let's say, when I say layers, I am talking about different forms of life, different life forms, right, layered life forms, if I may say so. They will end up affecting you, and we will see or look at some of those aspects. One is certainly water pollution with respect to microplastics. Let me see if I have that particular content right here. Again, some more pictures of Haridwar. Again, this is from Outlook. Again, the same article, NGT bans use or storage of plastic in Haridwar, Rishikesh towns located along the banks. Again, typically I see an effect, for 1 month, and then it's back to business. You get your vegetables in a plastic bag, even if you take a cloth bag, and so on and so forth. I guess it's again people not really understanding the issues, lack of awareness, lack of communication between, what do we say, the bureaucracy, or I guess the people who are going to frame the laws and the people, right. So that's one major aspect. Well, this is what we have on the banks of Ganga now, right. But again, there are different sections that are much cleaner. I would not dissuade you from visiting Haridwar and Rishikesh, but I guess don't add to the pollution now. So what do we have here? Here we are going to draw heavily from, what do we say, the new series. This was funded by the Ford Foundation, and Guardian published this series. It's called the United States of Plastic, right. So again, what do we have here now? Well, this is from, I guess, the US, images from the US, but this is obviously pretty much, what do we say, what you see now, right, in Indian supermarkets and so on and so forth. Every item wrapped in plastic, right, because it's convenient now. But what happens to plastic? Well, that's something to note, or something that we are going to discuss now. Typically, there are grades 1 to 7 with respect to plastic. Grades 1 and 2 where you have the jugs and bottles, right, plastic bottles, they can be relatively easily recycled and there is considerable value for it. And all the other grades 3 to 7, which include most of these, wrappers and so on and so forth, as you see here, though they are technically recyclable, they practically not really. For example, let us say you eat ice cream, and throw the cup away. Nobody is going to really put in water, wash the cup and then try to reuse that. Rarely does that happen, though that can that does happen, but it is not remarkably economically feasible or practically feasible too. Again, there are different grades, as in the quality of plastic that I get when I recycle different grades of plastic is going to vary. So, I can't really reuse that too. So, these are some of the issues now, right. So, what else? And one thing in India at least is the use of plastic bottles. So, if you think of what you can do or you want to bring about change, first thing is avoid the usage of plastic bottles everywhere. This is what we see, water wastage and obviously remarkable, what do we say, tons of or high quantity or high what do we say, number of tons of plastic being dumped out there. So, one thing is stop usage of the plastic bottles now. So, what does it lead to? Obviously, you see the plastics being dumped or they end up in the oceans, and now obviously you have the beaches, remarkably pristine beaches being polluted now, right. Again, the issue is, let us say you are not a beach what do we say, goer, and you typically live at home. So, what is the big deal, what do I care about it? Well, when once again I guess I will need to, okay, I will shuffle back again. As I said, different forms of life are being affected remarkably greatly. Here we have the bigger what do we say, kinds of plastics. Here we have a crab stuck in plastic, yes. But why would you, a concerned, or I, let us say, a concerned and selfish citizen, I am concerned about myself only, what do I care about it? Here this is from rain, analysis of rainwater or raindrops, let us say, okay. And here you see these microplastics. These are not plastic threads or such that you can see with your eye now. This is under, what do we say, a microscope now, right. And again, rainwater collected from across Colorado and analyzed under a microscope contained a rainbow of plastic fibers. And typically now most of the environmental engineers, let us say, are now researching microplastics. Until very recently or even now, we were talking about emerging contaminants as in pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth, which we take in. What is happening? The body uses only 20% of it, 80% is given out through urine or feces, and where is that ending up? Oceans, lands, surface water, and that is getting recycled, that is affecting the relevant aquatic life, and again getting accumulated in the food, right, or it is entering the food chain, and then we are ending up taking a small dose of, or very, very small dose though, of the emerging contaminants, pharmaceuticals, pesticides and such, but we are taking them every day, every minute now. So, that is an issue. That was a hot topic until recently, or still a hot topic, and now we have these microplastics. What is it? Here, this is an analysis from, keep in mind, a raindrop, right. Where do I have that? I have that here, rainwater samples. The key is that rainwater samples, which are supposedly pristine, right, they have this level of microplastics now. Keep in mind, right, microplastics. And again, we are going to drink it. It was earlier, some of our students looked at salt, common salt. Salt had more what do we say, levels of plastic. The one with iodine, I think, from a few brands had relatively more, but we could not analyze it further, again due to lack of relevant equipment. But that is a warning sign, because you are accumulating these particles again inside your body now, and again adverse effect, yes, we are going to have adverse effects. And there was this one person here, let me call him Lecomte, he swam the ocean now, he wanted to fathom what the level of pollution was, and they took water samples, let us say typically in these jars, and you see the level of plastic. These are from oceans, let us say, that his crew found, right, thousands of pieces of plastic daily in the water samples. Again, what do I care if a few crabs, or as we see here, fish ingest what do we say, plastics and die. right? What is the issue? What do I care? Other than them entering what do we say, your food chain, what is happening is these microplastics, as we just discussed, let us say, are now what do we say, going deeper into the ocean. And as you know, oceans are one of the biggest sinks of carbon dioxide now. And now there are but tiny and subtle changes with respect to how the microplastics are affecting the life forms inside the oceans, which act as what do we say, sinks for carbon dioxide. And therein again you are going to have your effects on global warming and such. So that is one aspect I guess that should really be an eye opener, right. And let us come back to what we have out here. This is typical, I guess this is from Thailand if I am not sure, but this is typical of most villages in India now, right. Plastic pollution. Well, in urban areas you do not see trees, that is why I guess you do not see the plastic, but if you look at all the sewer networks and such, let us say, and dig it up, you see tons, not tons, I guess tons and tons of what do we say, plastic accumulating there, and again leading to what do we say, either choking and pollution down the line, right. So that is something to keep in mind. We will come back here. So again, microplastics, that is of great importance now, right. Again, this is also from a rainwater drop, right. And what do we have here? We are talking about direct effects on greenhouse gases. So here we have annual CO2 emissions from plastic could grow to more than 2.75 billion tons by 2050. Again, from both the production and incineration of plastic. Production, yes, but with respect to incineration, as I mentioned, most plastic or considerable sections of plastic are not really economically or practically feasible to be recycled. And now where do they end up? They end up being incinerated, and you see the costs. You are going to have remarkable levels of CO2 emissions now, right. And plastics, the other issue was that recently, or I think a year or so ago, I went to UK for a conference and I was talking about the issues with respect to pollution that Indians face and so on and so forth. Well, there was a person or a person with respect to who was the head of the local environmental protection agency. I am not sure what exactly they call it, but he was the head or such, let us say, or the regional coordinator. And when I started talking about antimicrobial resistance or antibiotic resistance, and that developing here in India, immediately his attention perked up, or his eyes or ears perked up, I guess. Why, I guess, even though they have relatively less levels of antibiotics, floating around in their systems, surface waters and such, and thus lower levels of antibiotic resistance there, once it comes in India, let us say, you have, let us say, this plastics which can remain buoyant for decades or longer, traveling distances more than 3000 kilometers from origin. What do? They create new habitats for bacteria and algae, and also those bacteria can be, what is it now, antibiotic resistant bacteria too. Or obviously, the humans can or will, what do we say, transmit this antibiotic resistant bacteria, I guess, from one place to the other, right. But certainly, you have plastics. They act as habitats for bacteria and sometimes virus and algae. These colonies increase the biogeographical range of bacteria and algae, thereby risking the spread of invasive species, right, invasive species and diseases. So that is one other aspect, they act as agents for transmitting diseases now, right. That is something to keep in mind. So here we have a picture from where now US Santa Monica, right, which it seems was supposedly, or yes, not supposedly, prides itself as being a green city now. And keep in mind that here the footnote is that its only recycling center was recently shut down. Again, this is from that Guardian series about the United States of Plastic, which was funded by the Ford Foundation now. US plastic and recycling and landfills, that is a relevant article about. But how are they able to keep their what do we say, cities so clean now? What is happening to all their plastic? We know that relatively more what do we say, higher income groups, they tend to discard a lot of plastic waste either in India or in developed countries. So what is happening to all the plastic waste here, right? So that is something to keep in mind. Also, as I just mentioned, while the US represents just 4% of the global population, it generates 12% of the global municipal solid waste. So what do we see out here? So 4% percentage share of the global population, but 12% solid waste, right. Disproportionate amounts of solid waste are being, what do we say, produced. China, I guess, and India out here, you see that, I guess, proportionately we are relatively less, I mean polluting it less, but that is because of different levels of economic development. Typically, as I mentioned from a review that I saw, you know, and obviously as you can expect, if you look at different strata, the relatively higher earning groups, you know, discard more, or, you know, end up, what do we say, churning out more plastics, let us see. And again, that is something out here. Again, keep in mind we are talking about municipal solid waste, most of which sometimes, or not most of which, considerable fraction of which is plastic. But again, it is not just about plastic, but you see the great chasm, I guess, right. And again, as we talked about or, you know, or just discussing earlier, you know, where is all this waste going now? Is it just being recycled? So, one example that we have here is the UK, and the developed country has exported over 2.7 million tons of plastic to China since 2012. You know, where is it exporting it to? China, I guess, right. Total UK plastic exports for a 5-year period. Most of it going to China, and I guess some to India. Recently, I guess our government banned it, or recently, or I think in 2019 our government banned import of plastic waste, if I am not wrong. And same case with China too. We will talk about this in detail. So, as I mentioned, what is happening to all the plastic? Well, it is being shipped off. And typically when, you know, the problem is out of sight, you know, people think that there is no more problem, but that is not the issue. Though the problem is being removed from here, you are not really tackling the problem, you are only, you know, putting it somewhere else or on someone's head. So, who was taking it mostly now? It was being shipped, right, to China now. Until very recently, or 2018 or 17, it was being, or most of the waste was being shipped to China, and there they were what do we say, extracting the plastic that they thought was recyclable, and from which you can get relatively better quality of plastic again, and all the other what do we say, non-recyclable plastic or difficult to recycle plastic, they were just incinerating. Again, remarkable levels of carbon dioxide and remarkable levels of pollution, probably dioxins too, right. And what do we see here? Containers filled with plastic waste are seen and before being sent back to their country of origin in Malaysia. We will come back to this, but again the picture I wanted to use was that all this plastic waste which was coming in were going to developing countries, mostly to China, let us see. And again, I have another graphic here, containers filled with plastic waste before being sent back to what do we say, their port of origin. Again, this is Malaysia, again developing countries. Let me see the data. Okay, what do we have here? We have 68,000 containers, shipping containers of plastic, right, was sent to countries that typically mismanage their own plastic, let us see, right. This is every year, I believe, or is it per month now. So, again this is from the Guardian, as you can see, 68,000 shipping containers worth of plastic was sent to those countries, developing countries typically, which mismanage their own plastic. And what do we see here? 1 million tons, I guess, 1 million tons of plastic waste overseas every year. And what are some of the hot spots? Typically developing countries, you see India, China, right, and I guess Malaysia, and so on and so forth. Yes, so that is what you see out here. Let me again, what do we have? China certainly, and Hong Kong, as we saw earlier. We should certainly have India. I guess we are lower down the ladder. I know Philippines faced considerable issues, and where is Vietnam? Yes, Vietnam faced considerable issues. Malaysia, Thailand, certainly these were some of the countries that were taking most of the waste. Bangladesh and India too. There was India, but maybe not from America, I guess. So, let me look at the what is happening now. Now, the waste is polluting the beaches, right, of these developing countries, not just the beaches, I guess those countries now. Again, relevant problems. Business does continue to boom in what we say Vietnam, despite tightening rules. Again, why is that? Because people first look at short term needs. Obviously, they need to survive. You can't think about life after 10 years if you can't survive beyond 1 month, right. So, that is where the issue lies, with respect to economics, right. And again, what do we see here? A processing plant in New York. While Americans recycle only 35% of their waste, typically European countries relatively higher, and Germany we see 68%. Only 35% is being recycled, and most of it is being sent to developing countries. And what happens there? migrant workers sort through plastic bottles, right, at a particular plant outside Thailand, right. They manually have to sort it. Here they remove dirt plastic or those plastic items which lead to better quality plastic and can be easily recycled, and all the other plastic is either dumped or incinerated. Incineration, dioxins, remarkable levels of pollutants released in that particular area, and remarkable adverse effects on that particular population. I am waiting for some graphic here. Again, a worker puts styrofoam in a shredder at a recycle plant, remarkable level of particulate matter, right, in Manila, I think Philippines, I guess, right. And plastic is then stretched and formed into pellets in a variety of colors. This is what you come up with after you recycle plastic. Pellets, where is that? Pellets, again different colors, but this is what we are looking for. But if we are looking at economics, it is slowly but surely shifting now. This person Wong, who is into recycle, he says that he typically spends, let us say, $150 to buy a ton of plastic from US, right. Keep in mind, they are saying US recycler. These US recyclers are typically middlemen or companies that transport the waste from US to the developing countries, that is it, or mostly anyway. He spends $150 to buy a ton, right, 1000 kgs of plastic scrap from US recycler. Once it is shipped abroad, and sold to a processor, it is then turned into pellets and then shipped again to a manufacturer. The seller, typically asks for around 800 per ton. But is it remarkably, what do we see, cheaper than virgin plastic? Not really. The cost of similar virgin plastic, which is typically of higher quality, is just about $900 to $1000 a ton. So you see that slowly but surely the economics is shifting. It is not as much profitable now, let us say, to go through this whole process of importing waste and then making plastic pellets and then selling them, right. So that is going to lead to issues. So one, that could be one reason, and another reason obviously are the health effects. And what do we see here? We see that in 2018 China banned foreign waste imports. Earlier they subsidized, or the Chinese subsidized, what do we say, plastic recycling and or recyclers, pardon me. And so there was a booming market for all the plastic to be collected and shipped to China and Hong Kong, China mostly, right, and then being recycled or incinerated and then reused and sold. But nowadays again China, I guess we should call it a developed country, but maybe the data is not yet out there. But as you can see, slowly but surely their particular, what do we say, imports were decreasing. What do we have here? We have China and Hong Kong, China and Hong Kong, right, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. There has been a steady decrease, and then in 2018 you see that they stopped their imports. And what are the other countries that typically receive the waste? Malaysia, Vietnam and Thailand, certainly India, but India too banned it recently. You see their share has been traditionally relatively less, but from the late 2017 to 2018 you can see that it increased remarkably now, right, increased remarkably. What do we see out here? US exports to China dropped by 92%, right, while US exports of plastic to Thailand shot up by 2000%. And how many metric tons? 91,000 metric tons. So that is a remarkable increase now. And the industries, let us say, or the people in Thailand or the industries taking the waste, will they have ready-made facilities to be able to tackle this amount of plastic waste? No, they will not have what do we say, the facilities ready. But people always look for opportunities to make money, and typically who bears the brunt now? It is the person at the lowest rung of the economic ladder. There will be a middleman who is going to hire some poor workers for sorting them out, shredding them, and then creating the plastic waste, not waste, pardon me, pellets at a relatively low cost, and he will get rich. But typically all the plastic waste is going to be dumped in that locality, creating water pollution, and during incineration air pollution now, right. Let me see if I have some aspects here. Okay, I have some other data here. We have total US plastic exports monthly averages in kilograms. China cuts its imports, as I said, mid to late 27 and early 2018. So a drastic drop, that is what you see out here. And then Malaysia, and then Thailand, and obviously Vietnam, but I do not see that here, right. And what else do we see here? Is it Turkey or Indonesia, I guess, right. and as you see within a year or so their environments were what do we say overwhelmed, if I may use that term. And then even these countries now banned what do we say, or very much restricted the kind of plastic that can be imported. And now you see that the imports are decreasing again, right. And what do we see out here? Though in much smaller amounts, US exports are now reaching small developing countries with little ability to deal with their own plastic waste. So again now we still see Turkey, that has been increasing again. So much more poorer countries, Senegal, so African countries are coming into the picture now. So again this is the crux of the issue, is that you have people relatively developed countries and multinational corporations, and typically I guess we are talking about Coca-Cola, Pepsi and Nestle. These are the three major polluters of earth with respect to plastic, let us say. And Coca-Cola I guess is 10 times, not 10 times, 8 times more contributor of plastic compared to Pepsi, but these are the three major MNCs that lead to plastic pollution. That meaning their products lead to plastic pollution. Recently in India, they were trying to bring in regulation that the producer, let us say, of that particular product, let us say Coca-Cola, should be responsible for the Coca-Cola plastic bottle that, let us say, I will throw on the road after my usage, right. But I am not sure how that will be put into practice. Though there has been that regulation, it has not yet been enforced, probably again due to lack of communication or enforcement, or rather clarity about how to go about it, right. People do not want to scare away the MNCs, but you want them to take up their share of responsibility in polluting the earth. So I guess I am out of time. So with that I will end today's session, and thank you.